today's one, it's going to be 1911 versus the high Capa in Airsoft argument. I'm not going to go too much into technicalities really of, you know, using one over the other. Just kind of rant about my opinion on it, because I've used 1911s in Airsoft for quite a little while. I've had this army armament that doesn't come out very often with me because it's nice and pretty. And I've had a CO2 1911 Cybergun 1911 rail, and I've had the Tokyo Marui, just a standard 1911 A1. You know, they're just really nice, pretty pistols that are, you know, historically important, and lots of replicas of them exist because of that. They're, you know, popularized by movies and TV shows and video games and stuff. So, you know, they're quite sought after and nice to use. They're quite ergonomic, like they fit in your hand really nicely. And yeah, however, they do have their shortcomings, and that's where I think they are in Airsoft a little bit obsolete, because you go for something like this, you retain most of those practical benefits with the addition of a fatter magazine. And in Airsoft, for a gas pistol, that's just going to serve you really, really well. So let's get into it. So just to start off, we're going to be looking at the Army Armament 1911 A1 again, and then the Army Armament Staccato XL. I can't remember what their actual designation is for it. And then a little sort of combination of the two that I made. We'll also take a look at this as well. This stupid build. So first things first, like when I started getting into Airsoft, I didn't like high Capas until quite recently. I've always been a fan of the 1911, always loved Berettas. I started out with a Glock in Airsoft because they're kind of like the cheapest to get a hold of. But I do find them quite sort of blocky and boring. I quite like the 34 with the longer slide bit that, you know, kind of resembles a 1911. For the most part, I just like my 1911s and my Berettas, and then anything stupid like Desert Eagles and Mark 23s, etc. I quite like the HK line of pistols as well. I like the HK line of pistols in general as well. They've got some nice sort of angles and lines and stuff. In Airsoft, when it comes to pistols, they pretty much all do the same thing. So you are basing them on looks and your preference and the aesthetics of them. However, with the 1911, I've always found the magazine is just too thin. It doesn't hold enough gas to start with, and because it's small and has less surface area, it cools down a lot quicker than a lot of other pistol designs, and that's just because of the design of it. Like, you know, they're keeping it accurate to the real pistol and giving you a slim mag, because the real mag only holds 7 single stacked rounds. Obviously, it's Airsoft, the BBs are tiny compared to a .45 caliber rounds, so you can double stack them in here. And so in this particular one, the Marui, the Army Armament, and anything that's a copy of the Marui, the BBs are double stacked. It's still called a single stack mag, and that refers to how thin it is, but in Airsoft this is. But you do double stack the BBs. Now, some brands I've noticed, I think maybe SRC and WE and maybe some others, correct me if I'm wrong, they are single stacked, and the loader is actually down the side. So this is, you can't see it here, which is kind of cool. This is covered. You pull the spring down the side and then you single stack BBs in, and it holds like 12 or something. That I think is actually better, because at least with only 12 BBs, you're going to be able to shoot them all on your gas that's in your mag. This one's got like this extra bit here, and that is purely for gas. I think the spring does go a little bit further down as well, so it may maybe hold 3 or 4 more BBs than a standard mag. That's mostly for gas and will increase your gas capacity ever so slightly. But when I'm like firing under stress in a game, getting off shots quite quickly, rapidly, that mag's going to cool down very quickly, and then it is going to struggle to get the last however many rounds out. Like indoors, in nice sort of warm temperatures, it's not really going to be an issue. When you're playing outdoors, which is, you know, mostly where I tend to play, or like in an indoor arena that's an abandoned building, it doesn't have any heating or anything, that is going to start causing problems, especially if you're in the situation where you're drawing your pistol out anyway. That's purely it, and that's like if you are going to use a 1911 for that reason as well, you are limited to using it as a secondary use. There's no way you're going to be able to run this as a primary unless you've got like 20 magazines, just because you can't reliably count on your gas to shoot all your BBs. So why do I have it? Well, if you watch my video on this, I put it together because it's the one from Terminator 2, or close to. The slide on that one's actually more like this, but yeah, it's kind of that sort of vibe. It can take a CO2 mag, that makes it far more practical. With a CO2 mag in here, you can easily fire off all of the double stack magazines. And when I have my CO2 only cybergun one, I had no problem rattling off a couple of magazines. Only issue is, in the UK, some sites don't allow CO2 guns, so you're going to be without a pistol if you don't have one that can also take green gas mags. Running different types of gas, running CO2 and buying all the capsules and stuff, as well as buying green gas cans, might put some people off the idea of doing it. I, to be honest, kind of worry about running CO2 in this one because I'm not sure the internals are up to the pressures of CO2, and I don't really want to test that. This is more of a display piece now for me anyway, so I have no need to. Also, I did have a CO2 magazine for this, and it broke very quickly. Like the seal on the inside, I think like the white plastic bit that the CO2 can clips into and has a thing in the middle that pierces it. I think that cracked somewhere invisible to the eye, but it just pisses out CO2 as soon as you tighten it in. So that happened after not much use. I think that was the Raven one maybe, or the might have been Army Armament, but it fits this pistol. If you want a reliable 1911, as a 1911, CO2 is probably the most reliable way to run it in game. You just got to prepare for what that brings with it. So having that higher pressure, wear and tear on your internal parts, and needing to upgrade those to withstand that, or have replacements ready. I think for airsoft, not, you know, they do have their uses in like mil sim and film sim, and like people doing historical reenactments and stuff like that that want something accurate to replicate what was used in whatever they are impersonating. But in regular airsoft games, for regular airsoft use, in my opinion, I think 1911s are pretty obsolete now. And there's so much else out there that you can use. There's so much else that will give you a better gas capacity, better gas efficiency, and better designs to withstand the cold and the effects of cooldown. You don't need to go to 1911s. If you really truly like the 1911 design, you can still use that with a high Capa. High Capas. So when I came into airsoft, these were like all the rave. It was still pretty early when I first got into airsoft, going back sort of 15 years nearly. Everyone ran Marui high Capas because they were just the most reliable. But to me, all the high Capa stuff I really know is the stuff on YouTube that's advertised that you, if you do any airsoft stuff, and the ones that really stand out for the wrong reasons in my case. And they were the weird Gucci'd up HPA converted high Capa builds that half the slides missing. It looks like it's going to fall apart because there's so many weird cutouts in it, and it's all like speed softy, like brightly coloured, and just cringe. And so I did not like high Capas. I thought they were for, twitchy, video gamery, fucking speed softy kids. And most importantly, didn't really replicate anything in the real world, which is a big part of like the game and the hobby and the LARP for me. My gear should replicate something that is in the real world, have lots of nice markings on it, and I like that side of it. That was all until I worked at an airsoft shop. I'm not going to go into where it was or anything, or my experience there. To be honest, it wasn't too great, and I just don't want to shit on anyone that still works there or anything. But once I started working there, I saw this one. This. Now, it was the UK version that didn't have any trademarks on it, an Army Armament high Capa, based on a staccato. It had this nice stippling, didn't have the star, didn't have staccato XL, didn't have the trademarks under here or here or here or on the magwell. But I saw this and just fell in love with it. Like, it was the first time I had used the one in the shop as well, had a Trijicon SRO style micro dot. You couldn't use the irons to it, it was a bit too high. Behind the counter in the store, we kept all of the fancy Gucci looking John Wick stuff. I took this out of the other cabinets and put it with all that because I thought it was just as nice. Like the way the slide's been cut and everything it's like they did all their, the Army Armament did all their John Wick stuff up their pistol game, and then applied all of the same manufacturing and technique and stuff to the rest of their line, and it is really, really, really nice. So I had my eyes set on this. Unfortunately, they didn't really pay me enough to be able to buy any Airsoft stuff when I was working there, so I had to wait a little bit. I had to wait until I'd left and got another job. I think it was like the first thing I did with the first paycheck that I had a bit of extra cash with. After all my expenses were paid, I purchased this from JK Army because it's the version with all the trademarks. And so that's how I sort of initially got into high cappers, because now I was like, well, it is based on something real. It's based on a double stacked 9mm 1911 with a more tactical, modernized design. That makes a lot of sense. There's also all the John Wick movies and stuff going on at the time that kind of made me see that it is actually a real world thing. And that's it. It sounds stupid, but like my main gripe was, oh, but they're not a real thing. But they are. Like 9mm raw 45 double stacked 1911s are a real thing and have been for fucking years, and I've just been sort of blind to it. So it's in the dark about it. You know, I'm glad I'm not anymore, because it's now sort of one of my favorite kind of pistols. I went on a mission. I wanted to make it an offensive pistol. I want this to be what I can go use, stick it in my bag and go play after work at an indoor CQB place, because that's in London. That's kind of what we have that's in London that does like a weekday game. So yeah, I want a pistol that I can just take, and my pistol's my primary. So I got this. I got a bunch of mags for it, and it's great. It's like out the box. Army Armament have knocked it out of the park. It's great. Like the recoil string's nice and tight. It's so well machined. Like there's no like a negligible amount of play in between the slide and the frame, and I don't know if you can see just how tightly put together that is, and no like gaps. It's really just well fitted. Same thing I noticed with my 1911, and if you watch the video on that, I talk about how this isn't even a gun that was, you know, made for each other. I got the slide and the frame separately. They're not even like machined to be a pair, but that's the same deal. So yeah, they've smashed it, and this lifts 3 2s with ease, like a laser. With the flashlight on at night, just shooting it in my garden, blinking targets at the end of the garden. It's a laser beam. It's really cool. You know, I'm pretty confident and that this is going to be reliable as a primary, which is good for a pistol. So I did want the longer mags, but the ones I really wanted weren't in stock, and I didn't want to spend a load of money on mags that I don't want when these were 15, 20 quid a pop. If that, I think they were like 18 quid a pop, which is great for gas pistol mags. So I bought 5 of these, the Taran Tactical branded ones, which is cool. If you compare them to the 1911, it's over twice as thick. You know, the grooves as well give it even more surface area. They also help you obviously get it into the gun quickly, but yeah, and they just all that extra space means it cools down slower and suffers the effects of cool down. Not even when it's cold. You've got to understand that cool down doesn't just happen in cold weather. Cool down happens when the gas is going through the gun and cools everything down. So anything you can do to make it handle that more better is a good thing. That's gonna do you favors. It's great. So I ordered all this stuff. And I knew that I wanted this pistol. I just couldn't get it in the UK with the thing, so I ordered it from overseas. And I'm waiting. And whenever I order stuff from overseas and don't click express shipping, 2 weeks later I'm kicking myself. I'm like, why didn't I click express shipping? If you're paying this much to do it anyway, why don't you just pay the extra, what works out to be about £10, and get it here quicker? Usually I do, sometimes I don't, and then I kick myself about it. So I was waiting for this to turn up, and just kind of got impatient and ordered from another place, from Airsoft Tiger. Ordered this. Very cheap. I think I can't remember how much I paid for it. It was like 30 quid maybe, plus some shipping, but I paid for the fast shipping because it was only 30 quid. It wasn't that much. It was, I think it was like 12 quid shipping or something. And this actually arrived before this. I'm not complaining about JK Army. That was, you know, shit happens when you order from online. Delays happen. It has to wait for the next big load of stuff that's coming over here to jump on that ship with, or that flight with. I just got impatient and bought this. I did this because I knew without knowing for sure, but I just knew, I had a hunch that the slide from my Army Armament 1911 would fit on it. And it does. Not only does it fit on it, it fits on it really fucking well. And without replacing anything, without doing anything, makes for a really super snappy pistol. Also looks kind of cool. Obviously, like, the markings don't go together. It's a 45 slide on a 9mm staccato, but you know, who's to know that in Airsoft, right? Only me. And this was my, I'm waiting for my high capper to arrive high capper, but ended up kind of becoming my preferred one. Now, when this arrived finally, you know, I put all my bits and bobs on here. I put my sight on there. I put my I put my sight on there. I put my torch on there, and I was like, yes, I'm ready to go. And then I just had this still like this. My 1911 unfortunately just sat in a drawer like this, and I really didn't like that. I wanted the slide to go back on here, but I also wanted to keep this like this. From, again, Tiger 111 HK, whatever they're called, I ordered another slide. I wanted it to be slightly different, maybe more in keeping with the high capper vibe, so taller sights and whatnot. And yeah, I did notice for some reason with this slide, it's just not quite as smooth. It does get stuck a little bit, but I put in a 120% recoil spring, and that seems to have solved it for the most part. Enough anyway that it's just as snappy. So now I have two. And I've decided, like, this will be my outdoor one. Don't need the optic really on my outdoor one. It's going to live in the holster most of the time. It doesn't need to be as decked out. Whereas this one will be for indoors. It will have a flashlight and a torch on it. It won't be going in a holster, so that won't really matter. So that's how I'm justifying keeping both, basically. So there are a couple other versions of this. I think there's a properly licensed one. I can't remember who licenses it. I think it's EMG. I don't know who manufactures it. It's not EMG, but I watched some videos on it, and it's so rattly, it's so wobbly, like really expensive because it's officially licensed. So I wasn't really too interested in that. And I mean staccato, not high cappers. I'm on about staccatos now. And then Nova make a kit for, you know, they call it a Marui kit, but it's basically a complete gun. I think I might be mistaken on that, but you get like everything you need. Basically, you get a top and a bottom, and you stick them all together. A kit, like, but kits are a little bit finicky. Like, it's a lot of money to spend on something that, if you don't really know what you're doing with putting it together, you can cock up. Especially with a pistol. With a rifle, it's a little bit different. Everything's a bit bigger. But with a pistol, not my vibe. Now, my housemate has one, a Nova staccato. It's very, very nice. The finish is completely different to this. It's more of an anodized black, which is really, really nice. However, I kind of prefer this. It's this really nice kind of greeny tinted, really dark grey, and it goes very well with my Car 15, my VFC XM177, and that's something I really like because, you know, I'm going to be running them together. That was just a little nice added bonus. Again, just aesthetics. Aesthetics are king. They all do the same thing, so aesthetics are king. And yeah, if you are a real big fan of the original sort of 1911 lines and curves and look and stuff, you don't want the rails, you don't want the fat sights or like anything sort of tactical on there, you can get, I think WE make one, there's a couple of clones of that, but you can get a 1911 that is a high capper. It's got like a fatter grip, but it still looks completely 1911, and that's good for if you are doing a little milsim, but you know you're going to use your pistol a lot, or like a Vietnam kind of thing, or a World War II kind of thing, but you know you are going to use your pistol a lot. Or if you're just playing a regular airsoft game, but you want the look, but you do want more practicality, you can go for something like that. And that's probably like the best medium if that's what you're into. For me, however, this is now just my at home in the garden. It's really nice and accurate. I put my Tokyo Marui in a barrel and hop in there, and it's a nice shooter for sure. It's just not really practical for long, prolonged in-game use. because of the single stack magazine design, especially because it's not single stack BBs, it's double stack BBs, so you can't get enough gas out of it to fire off all the BBs reliably. Right, so I'm now obsessed with high cappers, obviously. John Wick, high cappers, kind of staccato, it's the STI International and Tarrant Tactical. I like putting the John Wick music on any Instagram posts I do of the high cappers. And yeah, so I'm on them. I've got my indoor one, I've got my outdoor one. I will quickly talk about the optic I bought for it. So I did a bit of hunting around for optics and stuff. So I did a bit of hunting around and a bit of research on optics for pistols. And decided I wanted something like quite small, low enough that I could see my irons through it still, without, you know, an extension of them and having the irons higher. The irons on this are already pretty high, so, you know, they're already designed for it. I don't want to make them any taller. And I landed on the Trigicon RMR. Now, obviously, this is not real. This is a cheaper Airsoft one, and it looks quite nice. Like, it looks like it's well made, well finished anyway. The markings are quite nice as well. So, apart from it says patent pending instead of patent, but whatever. I decided to go for one of these. Now, I was under the impression that it was a Holy Warrior. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Sotac and Holy Warrior are the same thing. That they seem to have the exact same product line anyway. And I've got some Sotac optics. I've got the Romeo 8 on my SIG rifle, and I've got the UH1, the Vortex, on my MP5, and they're actually really good. This, however, is not. Now, I got this from an eBay shop for 30 quid, 35 quid or something. I bought two of them. I've had two big problems with them. One is I put this one on this mount to put it on my MP5 because I could see my iron sights through it and use the dot. And now can't get it off the mount because it is stuck. This screw's completely fucked. The head's completely rounded out and you can't take it out. I'm gonna have to like drill it out. And then because it doesn't quite fit into the mount when I put it on my MP5, the battery doesn't have, it's not, you see there's a gap there, it's not quite closed, so the battery's not quite held in place enough. The battery goes in the bottom, and every time you shoot, the recoil of the MP5 switches it off. So it's useless on this mount, and it's stuck on this mount. I don't know, that was a consumer error by me. I should have done a bit more research and maybe bought from a more appropriately priced seller than the cheapest one selling what was apparently the Holy Warrior sight. So that was a bit of a fuck up on my part. Now, I did have an issue with the first one I bought. Messaged the seller and I was like, I'm having this problem, can you help me out? And he was like, yeah, don't even send it back, I'll just send you a new one. So the second one I did get for free, so I basically got two for the price of one, which I can't complain about there. The other one is on this pistol. Now, this one, this was the one I was using on here, and they say they're rated for, you know, the shock and the recoil impulse of gas blowback guns, right? And, you know, it doesn't move the dot. Like, I've had some red dot sights where on a gas blowback gun, the dot moves every time you shoot it visibly, and you're like, why can't I zero this sight? And it's because the dot's moving every time. You move it one way and then you shoot, and then it's back the other direction from where your BB's going, and you just go back and forth until you realize, oh, the dot's moving every time I shoot. So it doesn't do that, but the hardware on it, the actual mechanical parts, the adjustment screw for the height backed out. It backed out to the point where the tiny little pin, the tiny little spring in there fell out. Reticle's always like up here, it's like right at the top, and it makes you aim way down to get like your dot on target, and you can't move it down in the window. You can't move it down anymore. It's like maxed out, the adjustment on that. It's fine where it is when you've got it really low on a rifle. So I may keep it for, it looks good on here at the moment. I've not actually tested to see how good it is properly with where it sits on this pistol with this mount, so I may have to fill about with that. But if I get this one off of this mount, or I may just keep it on, I'll use it on AEGs or APs only, which is a shame, but whatever. It was super cheap, you know, it works out about 17 quid each. It's annoying, but it is what it is. Yeah, if you buy cheap optics, reserve them for simple electric guns that have no blowback mechanism. Before I move on to the next one, to add as well, like, there are electric pistols. So what I'm talking about here with the 1911 and Airsoft being obsolete is mainly focused on the idea of a gas blowback 1911 with a single stack designed magazine that could only hold a certain amount of gas and will cool down quickly. That's what I'm referring to. I know you can get electric 1911 pistols, but they look shit, in my opinion. SEMA makes them, and they look like water guns for some reason. They just look terrible. The angles are a bit wrong because they got to fit the internals in, and they just all off anyway. If you're going that far because you want to use a 1911 that looks like a 1911, you may as well get the WE one. That was on about the 1911 A1 high capper. So I'm obsessed with high cappers. I've got my optic, my flashlight, my setup for out indoors, CQB, high capper's my primary, and I'm ready. And I've got my outdoor one, which can go in a holster still, without getting a fancy custom holster. It's still nice. It's got all the markings and stuff on it, but it's a bit more simple, point and shoot, all good, ready to go. Well, that my secondary version for outdoors. I want a stupid one. So I did a stupid one, and this is what, no, I wouldn't say it's wise. It's on the cusp of what put me off high cappers in the first place. I switched. I watched lots of videos on people using high cappers as primaries and running them as primaries, and I still don't like the idea of running HPA at all, because that's where it becomes like a ghost buster. But I love the custom slide. This is about as much in terms of cutouts as I was prepared to settle for, really. I don't want any more than that. I like the slide. The rest of it is a Golden Eagle, which is a Marui clone, and a pretty one-to-one Marui clone, like Army Armor. A lot of people say they're Marui clones with high cappers, and then, you know, like the nozzle and the rear sight and everything just isn't quite. But the Golden Eagles are. So I knew my LA Capa Customs Jungle Cat slide was going to fit on there, and I got it in pink because it's actually for my girlfriend. It's cuter in pink. This is a better way, I think, more practical way of mounting a red dot than on the slide. The point of this LA Capa Custom slide is it's super light. It's super like poppy, snappy, quick. I mean, could do with more gas in this one for sure. So I'll give you a proper example of that, but there you go. It's great. I put a bit of stabilization, so O-rings basically around the inner barrel to sort of keep it a bit more centered, so that follow-up shots are a bit more accurate as well, so you can lap off shots in rapid succession. And yeah, it's basically a stock Golden Eagle with a pink LA Capa Customs Jungle Cat slide, and it's really cool. So I started off hating these and ended up loving them. What turned me on to the idea of a stupid one was I saw an ad on the used Airsoft forums for one that was all this pastel, sort of neon 80s pastel blue, and it just reminded me of the Time Crisis arcade machine controller, and that's what sold me on the idea of a bulky, angular, brightly coloured high capper. So I do plan on making dedicated videos for all three of these individually, to kind of go into them with a bit more detail, show you a bit more of like the performance side of things and how well they do. Yeah, keep an eye out for that. But yeah, that's been my little rant about high cappers, 1911s, and why I think 1911s in standard airsoft games are now kind of obsolete. Like and subscribe if you like this video. Be sure to keep an eye out for the next lot of stuff. I've got a lot of stuff that I need to like sort of edit and put out now. So that's all for this one, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.